I'd like to welcome to our show Maureen Harquail, CEO and Registrar with OMVIC. OMVIC stands for Ontario Motor Vehicle Industry Council. OMVIC administers and enforces the Ontario Motor Vehicle Dealers Act, as well as sections of the Consumer Protection Act. Maureen has been a leading strategic and legal advisor in regulated environments for more than 20 years. Prior to joining OMVIC, she worked with CIBC as a director of anti-money laundering, anti-terrorist financing, AML, ATF policy, served as general counsel and chief administration officer with the Ontario Racing Commission, and also has been an environmental and regulatory prosecutor for the Federal Department of Justice. Maureen has served on several boards and has been a member of the Naval Reserve. I'd like to welcome to the show Maureen Harquail. Thanks for being with us.
Great to be here, Alan. Thanks for having me on your show.
Yeah, extensive bio, I'd say. It's great. You've worked in a lot of different industries, a lot of different places. So it's great to speak to you and try and have a casual conversation as to how things are out there. We always like to tell our listeners, our viewers, how things are faring. And I think you come up with a very unique perspective on things. And so I kind of like to start there. I think for many of our show viewers and listeners, can you tell us a little bit about OMVIC? What do you do at OMVIC? What does OMVIC do every day? Kind of familiarize everybody with OMVIC.
Sure. So thanks for that. And you nailed it certainly at the beginning. OMVIC is the Ontario Motor Vehicle Industry Council, and effectively we're the regulator of motor vehicle sales in the province of Ontario. So the government has delegated to us the authority to enforce and administer the Motor Vehicle Dealers Act. And that's the act that oversees and guides dealers and salespeople on their interactions with the people of Ontario. And there's certain requirements that they need to comply with. And OMVIC is the regulator that oversees that. We're effectively a consumer protection organization. That is our mandate. And we're also responsible for our registrant or our licensee professionalism as well. We have 150 staff. We've got inspectors, investigators, and more importantly for Ontarians, we have a consumer support department that's there to answer questions from Ontarians when they're about to go and buy their first car or their second or third car, or if unfortunately they've had a problem with their engagement with a dealer in the province of Ontario.
So you guys do quite a bit, obviously. I thought I'd start, one of my first questions would be more a general perspective. Obviously, where you sit, you have a unique perspective on things. What would you say? Could you comment on the growth of the industry? Obviously, the industry is very important for us here in Southern Ontario, one of the largest industries. Are you seeing more people entering the industry? Are you seeing more dealerships opening up? Are more people selling cars out there? What are you seeing with respect to the industry as a whole? Are you seeing good times, or are you starting to see that some of these economic, high interest rates, high inflation rates, are you starting to see that cause a bit of a negative spin on what people are doing, what careers, if they're still choosing to be in the automotive sector?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and the what we're seeing, in fact, and even through the pandemic, the number of dealers, the number of salespeople has stayed relatively constant. So in Ontario this year and past years, we have approximately 8,000 dealers in the province of Ontario and 30,000 people licensed as salespeople who are actually selling those vehicles. And that number has stayed pretty solid throughout, even during those difficult pandemic days. What we are seeing, and that's kind of sort of the next part of it, is what we're starting to see now. We saw a little bit of it at the beginning of 2023, and I certainly worry into 2024, starting to see some bankruptcies, some failures of dealerships who have overextended themselves and have been overextending themselves. And I think that's the concern, and certainly the concern for the regulator, but also for consumers, because we encourage consumers that whoever they're going to buy their motor vehicle from, that they need to, think before you walk into the door. They can check a dealership's registration status or licensing status on our website. So just make sure you're dealing with that registered dealership, that registered salesperson before you walk in to buy that car.
Yeah, very important, very important. I guess from, looking at rising interest rates as we have, obviously inflation still elevated from a level, I guess, the Bank of Canada would like to see us at. From a sales perspective, are you seeing fewer sales? Are you seeing more complaints? I guess complaints would come your way if there were being made. What are you seeing on that front? I guess when people are finding things getting more expensive, higher rates, higher inflation, it's only, I guess, human nature that you might start to see more complaints. Are you starting to see those things?
So it's interesting. What we are seeing is year over year, sales are actually going up. And of course, a lot of that has to do with the fact that manufacturers have been able now to get their production lines, their manufacturing lines going, and have gotten out of that pandemic challenges. So they're able to spit out those cars and get them to the dealerships. And then there's a whole bunch of pent-up demand. So in terms of year over year sales, yes, we've seen increases in sales. That being said, though, what we are starting to see is, again, as I talked about, some dealerships who are finding themselves in some financial constraints. And in terms of consumers and the calls that we get coming in, we're certainly getting some that have concerns about perhaps contracts and bills of sale that they've already signed, and that perhaps they're having some second thoughts. They've signed the bill of sale, the contract with the dealership. They get home and they think, oh, I think I made a mistake. I need to somehow back out of this deal. And the important thing that we tell Ontarians is that when you sign that bill of sale at a dealership, there is no cooling off period here in Ontario. So it's not like buying a condo where you have a 10-day cooling off period. There is no cooling off period in Ontario. And that's so important for Ontarians to understand when they go and buy that car.
I know you must also, those buying cars, I'm sure a lot of them are borrowing to buy the cars. I know that I've had conversations back in 2008 about negative equity in homes way back when. Someone bought a home and then all of a sudden they take out a mortgage and the price of the home drops. They go to sell it to pay back the money they borrowed, and they can't sell it for the loan value. Is this starting to happen? Are you seeing this happen with cars? Because interest rates have spiked so rapidly. Those that are borrowing to buy a vehicle, are you starting to see this negative equity in these car loans?
We're starting to see some of that, and you're right. A few years ago, in fact, that was more topical. Some of it is coming back again. What we're also seeing too is people taking out loans to purchase those vehicles that are much longer in time. So not for example, the 48 months. They're going much, much longer, which no doubt means that by the time you come back or you want to unload that vehicle, the price of it has dropped tremendously. And right now, of course, vehicle prices are so high and are themselves inflated that you're going to see that it's going to have to happen, because eventually some of those prices are going to moderate. And of course, those interest rates, if you're buying a vehicle or leasing a vehicle now, are just exceedingly high. Again, those will come down, and then that negative equity is going to come up even more so. We're expecting it.
Yeah, and I guess for some people, what they do is they just roll that loan into the next vehicle that they purchase, and so it ends up being this spiral of your loan value just keep getting rolled in, and as you keep renewing your lease or your financing deal, do you see this as I guess a bigger problem as we go forward, as long as rates remain at these levels or even go higher?
Listen, it's a vicious circle, right? I think you've touched on it, that, you roll in one car and then you you want to get another car. Some consumers will never be able to get themselves out of this. Particularly, of course, concerned about the subprime area, where people are going to different lenders to get their financing to get a vehicle. Rates are oftentimes even higher. So it's a real challenge for consumers. It's such an important purchase. I mean, we say it all the time, right? It's the second largest purchase most people will make. Sometimes it is the largest that they're going to make. So for us, trying to educate people before they even walk into the dealership to understand the real costs of buying a vehicle and what it could look like in the short term and the long term.
Yeah, and I guess one of my final questions to ask you, electric vehicles, right? I guess that's everybody's interested in electric vehicles these days. It is the future, right? Pretty soon, according to all the auto companies, car companies, they're only going to be producing electric vehicles. Now we know there are a lot of extra costs that perhaps the buyer doesn't see at times, not aware of. Hopefully they're there. I'm sure you're making sure that they're aware, they're being disclosed. But what are some of those costs, and what should, I guess, people listening to our show, watching our show, what should they be looking for with regards to these EVs?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the first one is, of course, the upfront cost, and we're seeing that EV vehicles are quite a bit more expensive than your average combustion engine vehicle. And I think that's one of the reasons, of course, that the adoption rate is not perhaps as fast as governments, certainly our federal government, would likely want to see. I know there's a Scotiabank report out recently that said that, in fact, to get the kind of adoption that the federal government is looking for, the prices of those electric vehicles is going to have to come down by at least a third. And for low-income Canadians, it's going to have to come down by half to really try to get people to go into that dealership and buy that EV. So the upfront cost is really a huge issue now. I think that's part of what's preventing people from going and getting one of those vehicles. Also, of course, looking at the charging infrastructure, I think a lot of people are concerned, it's all well and good to buy the vehicle. How are you going to charge it? And what's it going to cost me to get that installed in my home? Of course, we're also seeing the challenges for, people who live in apartments and condos where those condominium corporations or apartments, they don't even have the charging infrastructure. So what's that going to cost to condo owners, et cetera, to get that kind of infrastructure? Range anxiety, of course, another one for people trying to manage, what does that look like? Can I get to where I want to be? And maintenance and repairs. And I think this is one that people perhaps don't think about. It's that, you get an electric vehicle, there shouldn't be much for repairs, but the reality is they do require a repair at one point or another. And the challenge is now at the dealerships and at repair shops is that it takes a special technician to understand what's needed to do the work. So, they don't have enough technicians who have the knowledge and the education to actually do the work. You can't go to your local garage to get that vehicle repaired and maintained, and often requires a very specialized person with special education. So again, something else to think about, because the costs of repair may very well be higher. I guess the other two things, of course, insurance premiums. Oftentimes those new vehicles, those electric vehicles, are more expensive right now. So you're going to have a higher insurance premium. And of course, depreciation, trying to see how that's going to look like in the longer term, how those numbers are going to play out.
And I think, again, you have a great perspective. You have a great seat, I guess, to see how the adoption of EV plays out, how quickly we're going to move to electric vehicles, where really that's all you're going to see on the road. And I know you mentioned affordability from the consumer standpoint. I know from the automotive company, like a Ford, for example, they just reported earnings. And in their earnings report, they said how much money they're actually losing in that area of their business. So they're struggling to make it more affordable for people to buy, because to build, it's costing them so much money. I guess the only company that seems to be making it work right now is Tesla. And you got to look at some of their technology, their efficiency. You go to one of their plants, I heard it's unbelievable with respect to efficiency and the tech that they have there in building these cars. So yeah, I'm not sure how we're going to get to what the government would like us to be, which is a environmental friendly world whereby we're all driving electric vehicles. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but it's going to be a struggle. And I think it's going to take a while to really get to that point.
I agree, and I think, in fact, that 2035 target that the federal government has is actually it's ambitious, and I think that that target relies so much on what the manufacturers can do and what they can deliver very quickly, because right now we're looking at 2%, 3% max right now. We know that consumers are some of them may be going into a dealership to say, I want to get an EV, but they're not able to spit them out fast enough, even in terms of supply. So there's some real challenges to even start getting to we're not even double digits yet in terms of people driving around in electric vehicles. So a lot has to be done, certainly the infrastructure piece. And I know the provincial government has made some recent announcements in terms of what they can do there to help support that. But again, there's a long way to go.
Yeah, a long way for sure. Maureen Harquail, thank you so much for being on the show today. Much appreciated, giving us your unique perspective on the automotive industry, where it's going, and teach us a little about OMVIC. And I don't know if many people know about OMVIC, but now they do. And again, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks so much, Alan. It's been a pleasure.
Take care.
Take care.